Welcome, everybody. We're going to start. It's my great pleasure to introduce Kahheetah Barnoskie. Kahheetah came here through ORISE Fellowship, a federal fellowship to work on our culturally significant plants project. Kahheetah has a master's degree from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln in agronomy, where she studied genetics of corn, Pawnee corn, or tribal corn, and she spoke about that to some of us 6 months ago. Anyway, it's my great pleasure to introduce Kahheetah.
Right. Thank you, Kelly, Noah, and good afternoon, everyone. Like Kelly said, my name is Kahheetah Barnoskie. I'm on a fellowship right now working under Kelly, and I'm here to talk about that fellowship and the resources I've learned from that fellowship, as well as some other projects and collaborations that I've worked on as well. So a little agenda, what I'll be covering, just a bit of background, some more about the work in the fellowship, and again, the resources I've learned and some examples of Indigenous collaboration that I've seen in different projects. Also, a bit more about ethnobotany considerations. So a little bit of background about myself before I start. I'm Pawnee from Pawnee, Oklahoma. I grew up traveling throughout the western half of the U.S. I got my bachelor's degree here at University of Kansas. And after that, I had several different jobs in Indian Health Service, following in my dad's footsteps, who spent all his career in Indian Health Service. But I moved back to the Midwest when my parents both retired and wanted to build a retirement home on land they bought in Pawnee, Oklahoma. And I wanted to be a part of that and help them build a home for the rest of their lives. And I did that back in 2015. I quit Indian Health Service, and it gave me an opportunity to be around my tribe and learn from my community in my tribe, which I didn't get that much opportunity to as when I was growing up. So that first summer, I got a summer internship with the Pawnee Seed Preservation Group, and I got to go up to Nebraska for the first time and learn about the Pawnee homelands and really study the Pawnee crops that we're growing traditionally and currently. And I've been doing that ever since, in some capacity or another, collecting data and observations on our Pawnee crops. And I'll definitely talk about that more later. And that group, the Pawnee Seed Preservation Society, really pushed me into studying more of our plants and our crops, and that's what made me go into agronomy at the University of Nebraska. And there I studied our Pawnee corn genetics, which is really fascinating, and it's a field I'd like to get more back into, and maybe someday I will. Currently, though, I am working under a USDA Forest Service Fellowship here at KU. And my family said I should put in some fun facts about myself. I was a drummer in a blues rock band called the Red and Blues. Actually, here in Lawrence, we played a lot a few years ago. COVID kind of swamped that. But before that, while I was at the University of Kansas, I did 4 years of rowing, the rowing team here, which was really fun. And before that, I was really into triathlons. I did a lot of sports, and I got pretty good at triathlons. I was an All-American triathlete for a few years. All right. Now back to talking more about this fellowship that I'm currently in. This fellowship is under the Oak Ridge Institute of Science and Education. They're a really great group that promote a lot of undergraduate, graduate, postgraduate, doctoral internships and fellowships in the STEM fields. They have a lot of opportunities. They're worth checking out for sure. The project that I'm working on, we currently call People, Plants, and Pollinators Project. And the major goals of this project are to bring culturally significant plants to prairie restoration projects. And we're trying to connect tribal communities with government officials, mostly Forest Service officials. And a major goal of this is to build a database of prairie restorations to help future restoration projects. And this project is focused in the Region 9 area that you could see in orange here. But we're not solely confined to that area. As you can tell, we're in Kansas right now, and a lot of prairies are Nebraska and the Dakotas. So we do kind of spread out from the Region 9 area. This is a 2-year project. We just gone through our first year, and so we got another year left to finish all these goals that we set out for ourselves. So People, Plants, and Pollinators project, we do kind of mix up those P's a bit. So we ended up calling this basically the PPP project. And this is the core team of the PPP project. We got people from all around the country in different walks of life. The project lead is Susanna Lehrman. She works in the Forest Service, but she also works at the University of Massachusetts. Jennifer Ballinger is our tribal liaison for the Forest Service. She has a lot of great connections that we've utilized with different tribal groups and communities. We also have 2 other fellows on this project located in Massachusetts. One's a postgraduate student and one's a postdoctoral student. And then we have me, another fellow researcher, working under Kelly Kincher on the ethnobotany side of this project. Oh, before I move on, I wanted to cover what is ethnobotany. Ethnobotany is basically the study of how cultures interact and use plants. So basically in this region, it's mostly looking at how indigenous people used plants. And what are culturally significant plants? Those are the plants that we're covering in this project. And those are basically plants that indigenous people used and still use today. And in our research, we are looking at basically documented, often historical uses of these plants by indigenous people. But I wanted everyone to keep in mind that all plants have cultural significance. All plants have been used by different people at some point in time, and indigenous people are still using these plants today. It's not a historical research, it's still going on today. All right, so the main things that we've done this year for this People, Plants, Pollinators project have been working on a database of prairie restorations. We've done a few workshops working to bring together tribal communities, again with plant experts, government officials, and we did some field work this summer also. Unfortunately not doing prairie restorations, but looking at seed sources that could be used for prairie restorations. And I'll talk a bit more in detail about each of these. So I wanted to start it with the field work that we did this summer. So this summer we spent about a month traveling through Missouri, looking for natural seed sources of prairie plants at national parks. So we went around the Mark Twain National Forest. And like I said, we did this for 3 weeks, looking for sites, prairie and glade sites that had likeliness of seed sources for prairie plants that were on our lists. And we would score these sites based on how many plants we would see, the likeliness of using these sites as seed sources for prairie restorations. And we're currently doing analysis on all our data, including the summer seed source data, which is not really the field that I'm working in for this project. So I don't really have any graphs or data to show you about this yet. But we are writing papers to publish our results and papers about the project itself. And I'm currently working on a paper with Kelly, specifically about the concerns of ethnobotany and the ethics of where this information came from, how it's being used, and really the future of ethnobotany research. So another big part of this project has been doing workshops. Workshops that will bring together indigenous groups with Forest Service experts, and plant experts to discuss culturally significant plants. Our first workshop was this summer. We worked with the Sault Ste. Marie tribe in Michigan. It was a 2-day workshop. Both days were filled with a lot of field trips all around the Sault Ste. Marie tribe, around the Hiawatha National Park. It was a really great workshop. We had a lot of discussions in the classrooms, but the best discussions were out in the field. We got to visit pine barrens, as you could see here. We visited little prairie sites that they had around their tribal community and through foresty areas. So it was really fun to look at all the different plants and discuss what was going on with the tribe. Our second workshop was here recently, a little over a month ago, and we had it here in Kansas. So me and Kelly really got to show off all that Kansas and around Lawrence has to offer for looking at plants, especially prairie plants. Again, we followed the same sort of format for this workshop as we did in the first workshop. It was 2 days. Each day was filled with a lot of field trips in the afternoon, a lot of great discussion about plants. And this time we worked with the Iowa tribe of Kansas and Nebraska. So we had our second day out at White Cloud, Kansas. And it was really nice. This picture here is from a prairie restoration that they have going on. We all drove around and got out, looked at the plants, and had some really great discussions. I also wanted to shout out to our caterer for this workshop for both days, Indigenous woman who runs Wadalisi's Indigenous Food in Kansas City. She was really great, had really great food, all centered around traditional Indigenous foods. It shares some pictures from all the field trips that we took everyone to look at these prairie plants. We started here, actually in this room, and we took people out to the Monarch Watch Garden. They got to go to the mycorrhizal collection over in the greenhouse, which was really fun. Everyone was really interested in that stuff. Then we drove around to the Native Medicinal Plant Research Garden north of town, which is really great, worth visiting if you haven't. We also went further north to the Hearing Trail and then up to the KU Field Station, where we got to get out and look around, talk a bit more about what's going on at KU with prairie restoration projects, with the field station, with all these hiking trails as well. We also included a bit Haskell into our workshop. We got to go tour the Haskell greenhouse, talk to the students, look at the different projects that they have going on. We ended the day with a great keynote speak from Daniel Wildcat at Haskell, which was really great. A lot of community members ended up coming to this. A lot of Haskell students ended up coming to this. It was a really great time. So a huge part of this last year has been working on a database of prairie restorations in the US, mostly around that Region 9 area. So each of us fellows read hundreds of published papers for prairie restorations. We were looking for seed lists, seed mixes, plant surveys, and we got it all in this database that we're hoping to eventually turn into a tool online for people to use to look at what prairie restoration sites are going on in this area and what they were planting. And further than that, we'd like to use this tool to recommend including culturally significant plants and pollinators into prairie restorations. And so this is a bit of what our database looks like right now. It's a bit larger than this. As you can imagine, it goes on about 20, 25 more rows to the right. But I wanted to highlight some research publications that you all might recognize. There's one from Free State High School here. There's also several of Kelly's papers that made it into this database as well. So in this database, we also wanted to include other useful information for people. We include like accessibility to each site, history of land use at each site, and intentions of each project, because not all projects were set out to make a prairie restoration. They had some other agenda in mind. So that's all included in this database. And of course, we're doing a lot of research on ethnobotany to include culturally significant plants into this database, as well as pollinator information about each of these prairie plants. So from all this research I've been doing this year, I wanted to highlight some resources that I think are very useful, not only to this project, but to anyone that's really interested in plants and gardening, pollinators, or culturally significant plants. And so I have resources mostly about ethnobotany, resources for pollinators, and some government research resources, since this is a Forest Service project. So the first resource I wanted to share was where we really got all of our ethnobotany information. This is the Native American Ethnobotany Database. It was started in the 1970s by an ethnobotanist named Dan Warman, who really used this to make a reference dictionary of medical ethnobotany uses of plants. But since then, several universities and projects have picked up this dictionary, this reference source, and added to it. And it is now currently online for anyone to use. It includes over 4,000 plant species. It covers more than 250 Native American tribes. And there's way more than just medicinal uses for each plant now. They have fabric uses, dye uses, food uses. And it's a really great source of information. And I found that it's really the most comprehensive source of ethnobotany data that I've seen, but it's definitely not a complete list. But it's a good place to start research in ethnobotany. And for this project, I understand to save time and money that we are only using this as our resource for ethnobotany database. Like I said, it's a great resource, but it's a bit discouraging having only this represents all of ethnobotany information. But we're making lists of concerns and considerations to use this source sort of as a disclaimer on our database. And we're writing several papers that we will publish about this type of reuse of older resources that may contain a lot of biased observations, old lingo, repetitive old information, and we're suggesting more Indigenous collaboration and sharing of or quoting cultural uses. And to build off of that, my next resource I'd like to share is Local Context. They're a new group, a new website online, bringing collaboration, inclusion, ownership of traditional knowledge back to Indigenous peoples and communities by connecting research projects to Indigenous communities. And they've created these cool labels for projects, for databases, for collections to use right on the face of their project. And these labels will let people know that they're willing to connect with the Indigenous peoples and groups that they are talking about. And Indigenous communities can get on this database and see what projects are talking about them and connect with that project and, you know, look at it, discuss, and be like, hey, this information is not all right. You should include this and this and this. Or say, hey, you're doing a good job, but we would like to be a part of this project as well, since you're talking about us. And it's a really great source, but it's new. Their hub of databases and the research projects and collections isn't that big, but they do have several government entities and several universities using their hub of databases. And for the pollinator resources, we used a handful of resources to come up with pollinator information for our databases. But I wanted to share two resources that I think are very user-friendly for anyone to use. You don't have to be making a database to use these. The first is the Audubon Native Plants Database, which lists plants that are found natively grown within your zip code, which is really cool. It also lists local vendors where you could find these seed sources within your zip code. And the other user-friendly pollinator source I'd like to share is the Xerces Society. And they have a lot of great recommendations for like the region that you live in. They have a bit more information about the plants and how to grow them and the pollinators that are associated with those plants, as you can see here for our area in the Southern Plains. I also wanted to share a few government resources found interesting. The Forest Service Tree Search is a great website that has reports and articles that you can't really find through a Google search. It's specifically Forest Service information about projects going on within the Forest Service. And the last government resource I'd like to share is the USDA plants database. I'm sure a lot of you know about that. They have thousands of plants on there. You could search by their scientific name, common name, and their USDA symbol, which is how we really merged all this plant information in our database through the USDA code. And I'd like to share Kelly's tip for using the USDA plants database to search for plants by your county and I guess around your surrounding counties that you live in. This way you can find plants that are found in your area that you live in. And I wanted to share how I've used this database and all these other references with my dad's yard in Pawnee, Oklahoma. I looked up Pawnee County. I got the USDA plants list for that county. I included plants culturally significant to the Pawnee tribe. So we have that information right next to the plants that are found in our county and merge that with the Audubon native plants list. So we know if those plants are found natively in our county and what type of pollinators are attracted to those plants. And this was really fun to share with my dad. So I could share with him what I've been working on this past year, and I got to help him improve his yard and land and bring more pollinators, beauty, and meaning to the plants that we are interacting with every day, or at least every time I go visit him. And that's where I want to go with the next part of my presentation, is sharing resources and knowledge and using more Indigenous collaboration in projects. More than just through backyard projects, I wanted to talk about how projects like the People, Plants, Pollinators project that include ethnobotanical research and starts to get into the realm of traditional knowledge, how these type of projects can improve with a little bit more Indigenous collaboration. And a big part of that, I think, for this part is the papers that I'm writing with Kelly. We're looking at ethnobotanical resources, figuring out how we can still utilize this amazing information that's already out there and being shared while still respecting and acknowledging the original sources of where these came from, where this information came from, and the people behind that information. And to give example to what I'm getting at, I wanted to pull from other projects that I'm a part of. And again, share how these resources have really helped in different ways. So as I mentioned, I'm part of the Pawnee Seed Preservation Society, is now what they're called. I'm also a community researcher on a project focused on agrivoltaics in the Pawnee community. So we're trying to figure out how to utilize the space under solar panels, specifically with gardening under solar panels. That project is funded through the University of Oklahoma, but it includes several other universities across the US, so they can provide expertise in the solar panels and plant utilization. talk a little bit about that. The Pawnee agrivoltaics is a great example of immersion of academic expertise in community work. I got on this project just before starting this fellowship, and I'm really glad I did. I've learned a lot from it. Watched the experts study, research, and workshop with us all about solar energy, solar panels, all kinds of stuff about what you could do, the different angles, looking at the sun, how it might affect the gardening part of this project. But it was really interesting for me seeing all these experts of solar panels and solar energy install these solar panels. And it was really something. I could tell it was their first time installing solar panels. And my dad has worked in several different areas of construction growing up to pay for his college, and has taught me and my brother a lot about construction, building their retirement home, remodeling different homes as we grew up. So I knew a little bit about construction, but it was interesting seeing the choices that these experts in solar energy made to put up these solar panels. Just choices that I wouldn't make, and I don't think any other construction people would make. Things like quick set concrete to hold up these giant 8-inch beams. The rafters were about 8 to 12 feet, and they're already starting to sag. And the wood wasn't really treated or painted yet. So it's a lot of little mistakes. That really reminds me to stay humble in the world of academia, and to remember that the experts don't always know everything. And I know they were trying to save time and money by installing this themselves, but if they had really collaborated with others, there's other solar panels in Pawnee, there's other solar projects that have gone up. If we had at least talked to those people to get to know what we need to put up these solar panels, and talk to other construction people that have worked on projects, I think we would have made really improved the efficiency and the integrity of these solar panel support systems. But the project has been good at collaborating in other ways. This project has worked with the local Pawnee Nation College, pictured here, for space and volunteers. They've worked with a local Oklahoma State University Extension Office in Pawnee to help put on workshops, and other specialized groups they worked with, including the Pawnee Agriculture Department, the Pawnee Seed Preservation Society as well, all throughout the different aspects of that project. And I got to share the knowledge that I've learned from this fellowship. Besides the resources that I've shared with you here, I've learned a lot this past decade working with plants and gardens, mostly from like my dad working in the garden with him. I hadn't really grown a garden until they moved back to Pawnee and we had more land to work with finally. And I've learned a lot by sorting seeds at the Pawnee Seed Preservation Society from my mentors, Rebecca Hawk, who started that society, and Ronnie O'Brien in Nebraska, who connects us to our Nebraska gardeners. I've also learned so much from the stories I've shared with the other summer workers when we go up to Nebraska, the real Pawnee community members. That's where I really got the traditional knowledge that I've learned these last 10 years. And that's a lot of local resources around Pawnee, and I think it's the same in other communities. There's a lot of local resources that should be utilized in different projects, not only community projects, but like academic projects. And a really great resource I wanted to share is Haskell, Indian Nations University. It's a really great resource that many don't utilize. I know KU has a lot of partnerships with Haskell, but there's other projects that could reach out to Haskell. I don't think people realize how great it is. There's like nowhere else in the country, in the world really, that has this many different Native American tribes located in one spot. So it's really underutilized resource, I think, that people should think more about, or at least go and visit Haskell, talk to some students, see what's going on at Haskell. And I can't have a presentation without sharing a bit more of our Pawnee crops. These are the type of crops that we contemplated growing under our solar panels for the agrivoltaics project. We did look through the Native American ethnobotany database that I shared earlier to learn more about the uses of these plants. We did notice that there are a couple of plants that weren't even mentioned in the Native American ethnobotany database for use by the Pawnee people. But we know the Pawnees did use a lot of these plants traditionally, and we're still growing them today. And I wanted to give a quick little history of Pawnee, just because when we were choosing those plants, we had plant experts come in and talk to us a little bit about what they would recommend to grow under these solar panels. And they weren't necessarily the plants that we would choose for growing a garden in our Pawnee community. And that's because they didn't know that much about Pawnee history. And before working with any tribal group, you really should learn at least the basics of the history that went behind that tribe. So you might have noticed I mentioned a lot about Nebraska in this presentation. That's because that is the homeland of the Pawnee tribe. That's where a lot of our villages were, a lot of our hunting grounds were, and that's where we call our home. Currently, there's not really any Pawnees left in Nebraska. We are all mostly in Pawnee, Oklahoma. That's where we were forcefully removed. Finally, in 1875, our reservations did get smaller and smaller in Nebraska before then, and that's where we currently still are. It's a pretty small tribe. We only have about 3,000 to 4,000 members right now, but we lost a lot of our traditions, a lot of our knowledge on this move, and we are still trying to get that information back. I think the Pawnee Seed Preservation Society is a great resource and a great showcase of how we are trying to get that information back, one seed at a time. And that is a picture of the founder of the Pawnee Seed Preservation Society, Deb Eggahawk, growing our corn in Pawnee. Traditionally, how we used to grow corn in these little mounds with 4 to 5 seeds in each mound. We usually have a sunflower berm around it to protect the seeds and the other crops from wind and other critters trying to get into our gardens. So like I said, our plant experts in the agrivoltaics project didn't really choose the crops that we would have chose. They didn't really suggest that we grow corn under these solar panels, since corn does need a lot of sunlight and certain varieties can grow pretty tall. But if you look at most historical observations of the Pawnee, they will always mention corn. Corn was very important to the Pawnee tribe. We have several different ceremonies around corn throughout the growing season and the harvest season, and it's just very important to us traditionally and today. We have about 24 varieties of Pawnee corn that we grew traditionally, and we are very close to reaching that 24 with our current Pawnee corn varieties. And they're all different colors, sizes. We have different flour corns, sweet corns, popcorns, more than you can imagine. And that's really where my expertise came into the agrivoltaics project, observing and collecting data on these corn varieties for the last 9 years. And these are the varieties that I would suggest for growing under a solar panel. They each have different strengths and weaknesses, mostly being that these corns grew really great in Nebraska, and that's where I observed and collected data on these. And they like to grow in Nebraska, and we're still trying to grow these in Oklahoma, but they do not grow as well. So far, we've gotten 5 or 6 different varieties to successfully grow in Oklahoma. As you can imagine, it's a completely different environment. It's a bit hotter. The soil's a bit more red, a bit different. There's way more bugs and critters that will get at these corns than in Nebraska. So we're trying to adjust to that. and grow these successfully in Oklahoma, where most of the Pawnee people are. But it is taking a while to get all these varieties growing. Our lovely blue flowered corn, I think, grows the best in Oklahoma, but it does get pretty tall and bushy. So I'll grow the other plants next to it. Our white flowered corn is a great traditional corn for the Pawnee people. It grows a little shorter than the blue flower. And we like to use it in different ways in our soups and our flours. And the blue speckled corn is a beautiful corn. It's kind of an in between the blue and the white flower, but it is a bit more rare. And that's something else we have to consider with this agrivoltaics project, is making sure people don't come up and try to take the ears from us. And our last consideration was the eagle corn, which is beautiful. It's one of my favorites. It's tasty. We've been lucky enough to grow a few acres of this and use it in our community feasts, which everyone really loves when we do that. But it is harder to grow in Oklahoma. Yeah, we're still having difficulties with that. It's kind of sad to see sometimes that this corn really wants to go back to Nebraska, where our people were from, where our homeland's from. So from all these projects and research fellowship, I wanted to highlight some ethnobotany considerations. The biggest being, if you have time in a project involving ethnobotany or traditional knowledge or Indigenous history, make the effort to try and collaborate with these people from that tribe or community. Please don't just do a web search and call that good. Historical observations have all kinds of biases, discrepancies, and can paint the wrong picture of what was actually happening at the time. If you do get to collab with an Indigenous tribe or community, remember to have patience and be aware of the ethical protocols and cultural sensitivity of information that they're sharing with you and that you might share with the rest of the world. And I wanted to share these other projects that I'm a part of because I think they're a good example of projects with ethnobotany elements that are working at sharing and collaborating and really protecting, and really connecting with Indigenous peoples on traditional knowledge. We're all really working together to learn from each other, and we're all really trying to make something good together for each other and for our community. And that is all I have to share with you. So thank you for listening.
Yeah. So are there other plants that you look for in prairies that are traditional in the Pawnee culture?
Besides like the gardening plants. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. There's a long list. And Pawnee is pretty well documented compared to some other tribes on the plants that they used, especially prairie plants. A lot of grasses and sages we used, for sure.
I was wondering about like the different workshops you had, and if you had anyone who came like from commercial seed producers, if anyone from that realm was interested in learning more about, you know, culturally significant plants and how to incorporate that into their production.
Yeah, no, we didn't. That would be very interesting if they did come. It would be a bit scary too, having worked with our ancestral seeds and having studied our ancestral seeds at a university. I had to take a lot of precautions in who I shared that information with, because a lot of my peers at an agricultural school were working towards going into those type of corporations like Monsanto and Pioneer, and they might have the wrong intentions of trying to use these seeds for you know, genetic modification, trying to get more today's type of corn to adapt better, because these corns do grow a bit better, at least where they're from. In Nebraska, I'll see the new contemporary corn just blew over in a windstorm and the crop will be gone for the rest of the season. But that same storm will blow over our corn and you could go stand it up, it'll keep growing. They're very resilient, but you don't even have to do that. A lot of our crops traditionally were left alone for a few months during the summer as we went out and did our bison hunting and gathering, and the corn will just grow back up on its own. It's very resilient corn.
So of the like couple of dozen Pawnee corn varieties, do you have information on like what's the population status, like who's maintaining the seed, what varieties are at risk, or where did you get the seeds for this research?
Yeah, I do have all that information. I've learned these last 9 years working with the Pawnee Seed Preservation Society. They're the ones who are keeping our Pawnee seeds mostly, and that started in the 1990s. Deb Hawk reached out to the Pawnee community and Pawnee families and got the Pawnee chiefs to open up some old bundles that still had corn in it. We do keep corn in our bundles, wrapped in buffalo hide, and some are in skulls, some are in corn husks. And we were able to pick out from those seeds and grow these different varieties. I think in the 1990s, she started out with 5 different varieties, and now we have about 24 different Pawnee varieties.
So because people kept trying to, I don't know what a bundle is.
Oh yeah, well, a bundle is a sacred item in our tribe that's passed down. We have 5 different bands. Each band has a bundle. Some bands have more than one bundle because they might have taken care of the corn crops or different crops more. Those bundles were passed down from generation to generation, and they're used in our ceremonies as well.
You shared a lot of resources that are very interesting. Is there going to be a one-stop shop for these resources that you shared in your presentation?
Yeah, like you said, our PPP project, we're trying to make that database into a tool on the internet somewhere, hopefully at the end of the fellowship by next year, where people could see where the prairie restoration sites are, the seed mixes, our recommendations, but we also want to share all these resources as well.
Yeah.
So we will try to make that a one-stop shop for people.
We may host it here. Because our federal friends are a little afraid of hosting a website right now.
I'm interested in how you've seen through the lens of intertribal sharing. So like the knowledge that might happen between, I mean, I'm sure there's common uses potentially between tribes, but also Haskell seems like a place where there's kind of an opportunity for a lot of sharing between tribes, and a lot of knowledge lost between different tribes.
Yeah, for sure. The Pawnee people traditionally worked a lot with the Arikara tribe, who, when we were separated, they moved further north, we moved south, but we still try to have a reconnection with the Arikara. Every year we will host them or they'll host us, so we do share information that way. Yeah, it has taken a while with a lot of Indigenous projects. It takes time to build that trust, so we could trust that they're not going to use our seeds and go to like Monsanto or some other company just to share those seeds. But yeah, we are at that point where we do share a lot of the information now, and I have seen a lot of cool Haskell student projects where they're sharing with other people from other tribes, the different information from those tribes.
Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you, Kahheetah.